everyone, and welcome to the latest Mobycon Academy session. We're obviously doing a study tour today if you're signing in with us, and we're going to take you on a bit of a ride. It's actually Shelley's normal route to and from work when she chooses to cycle. As always, if you have questions, make sure to put them in the YouTube chat. The format is we'll give you a little bit of background, then take you on the tour and show you around to see some new places. If you're not already subscribed to Mobycon Academy and you're joining us just through YouTube, be sure to subscribe at academy.mobycon.com, where you can get access to not just these videos, but also downloadable aids, guides, booklets, lots of stuff to help you with all of your mobility planning and designing needs. But otherwise, let's get started.
Yeah, thanks Melissa for this introduction. And it's my pleasure to be here today, as have been cycling back and forth Delft and The Hague a lot. And I think actually the reason why we want to talk about it today is because that we feel like luckily all around the world, depending on where you are, because it's going up and down with the pandemic, but it feels like places are opening up a bit, and especially offices are opening up a bit. And no, not everywhere it's the same. But we hope that more and more people will start cycling to work as a commute, and we felt like that's why it's nice to start talking about this topic today. So indeed we will bring you along my route. So I live in The Hague and our office is in Delft, and you might have read the blog post we wrote about this. If not, it's a little starter. Because there are of course several routes which you can take if you're traveling towards your work. It all depends on what kind of work you're doing, or where your office is located, or if you really need to be going to clients all the time. For myself, there are multiple options if I'm going to travel, and most of the time, certainly before the pandemic, I was going into office in Delft, and depending on the day I could go to appointments by bike, or I was just in the office for the whole day meeting my colleagues there, or sometimes I would go by public transport and travel to other places via that. The interesting thing is what we want to share here is that you see the different options I'm having. So by bicycle, it's around 42 minutes, depending on how fast you cycle, of course, how much energy you have, how the weather is. It's a nice route, which we will be going on to later on, so you can see for yourself if you like the route or not. And I have two options to go with public transport. One of them is a direct tram running from The Hague to Delft. So it's a good connection because it's very easy. You can just go in, sit down, and ride it almost to the end. But as trams are often a bit slower, it's not that fast in my opinion, and I also of course need to walk to the stop and need to walk a bit going to the office. So a faster option with public transport is going by train, because there's a really good connection between The Hague and Delft. It runs, I think, almost every 10 minutes.
Almost every 10 minutes,
yeah. So often if I would use it, I would just go there and see when it arrives and then take it, so that's I get very easy. Of course, you need to go to the station first, and for me it's like around a 10 minutes bike ride, so not too bad at all. But what I always feel like you need to have enough time to park your bike there.
Yeah, of course.
Need to have enough time to be on a platform, etc. And then it's a few minutes walk from the station towards the office. Another option is of course by car, and it all depends on your home situation and the office situation, if parking your car there is kind of stimulated or not. I do need to have a parking permit for in the city center, so if you have that, I can just park it in front of my street, which is very easy going.
Yeah.
But here at the office, we often park it a little bit further because our office is quite in the city center, and then you need to walk a bit as well. So these are several options.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about this is when people are looking at the times is there's not too much difference between if you cycle the whole way or if you mix tram and walking, and similarly with public transport and the car. So, you know, if you're trying to look for a more sustainable option, at least car versus public transport or the train, you know, the train becomes an easier option, and then you don't have to worry about the stress of driving, which is really convenient.
Yes, I totally agree with you, because it was also kind of nice to look into my own options which I'm having, because often you just do what you normally do. Well, normally it's now gone with all the working from home. But I think time-wise, there's not so much to gain. And of course, it really depends on how the infrastructure is arranged in your area. But that was very interesting to see as well. I was just going to make a quick comment. So I realize we don't have it in context here, but when I was living in Vancouver in Canada, it was a similar sort of comparison between me cycling along the seawall to get to work, or to do a combination of walking to the local SkyTrain, which is like our elevated light rail, and then taking a bike share the rest of the way. The time difference was not that great between the two. Obviously, there's a cost difference. One is free. One costs a little bit of money. But having those options available, especially when it was a lovely rainy winter Vancouver day, I'm going to go for public transport if I can. I think it's very nice to have different options, and of course, I think my situation is kind of ideal because there are so many options. But I think it's nice to have this as a starting point to think about, okay, what kind of options do you have for your traveling to work? Of course, it's a shame if you feel really limited that there's only one option, because I think it's nice to have some bits of freedom. And I know that not every area will be so full of different options. But I think it's important, like when we're going through the tour, to remember that part of this is to show people how these intercity connections can work. You know, especially if you're planning these kinds of routes in your city, to see, you know, it doesn't have to be this big, massive cycle highway project. It can be a network of smaller routes connecting to get you where you need to go, to provide those options for people. So this was just as a starting to think about, okay, what kind of types of routes can you have to commute? We are now going to travel from The Hague to Delft, so try to imagine that. And of course, you want to have more context. But that's what we will discuss now, and it was just something to start with. So this is an overview of the routes. You see The Hague along the coast, and then the route will take you towards Delft. It's quite an urban, dense area, but you see bits of green. And what you also really see is, I think, the urban sprawl of the city. There's limitation of not being able to develop further towards the coast. So it's kind of a sprawl north to south, if loads of places have, if you're along a water somewhere. For just some context, The Hague, the city itself, has 500,000 inhabitants. So for the Netherlands, it's one of our bigger cities. For other areas, it might not so big. And Delft, if I remember correctly, has 1/10 of a million. So 5 times smaller, or 1/5 of The Hague. But it's pretty connected. I think also, as loads of the times we are talking about Delft here at Mobycon, because our office is here, and it's a very interesting city. But Delft is really in between The Hague and Rotterdam, and I think together it really forms an urban area. Of course, what's interesting about The Hague, that our political center is there. So you definitely recognize that when you're traveling in the city, with loads of governmental buildings, loads of embassies, if you go to a playground, you hear like loads of foreign languages. And then, of course, Delft is way more historic. It really has like the canals. And The Hague was also slightly bombed during the Second World War, not as bad as Rotterdam, luckily, but it has some bits which were really demolished during the Second World War. So I think Delft is a little bit more nice and historic.
Whereas The Hague is, you have a little bit more of that modern.
Yes,
aspects
I think
thrown
it's
in.
quite a mix
Yeah.
of modern and old. And they're trying to get the ring canal back in The Hague as well. I know Utrecht is now famous on doing that, so maybe who knows, The Hague in some years has that as well. Okay, so that's what was some background I think about The Hague and Delft and the routes we're going to ride on.
Yeah, so what we wanted to show you as well is what we're working with here in the Netherlands in terms of these inner city connections. So if we can get that, the map on the left-hand side, those are the LF routes, or the long distance recreational or tourist routes that exist throughout the country, connecting, as you can see, one corner to another. And then the map on the right is all of the more interconnected routes, so the first is the tourist routes, the second is the recreational routes, and these are more interconnected within the cities. So they do take you through, green spaces and through nature, but also into the city. And so in the next slide, you can see them married together. Shelley.
Oh, sorry, I was.
It's okay. So then you can see, in the context of The Hague and Rotterdam, what you've got the 2 or 3 fairly substantial long distance routes, but then a lot of interconnected routes within there, which is part of what Shelley takes to get to and from work.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's always nice to see those maps. And of course, let's say you've seen all the different ways how you can travel from The Hague to Delft, and you're going to decide on what you are going to do. Of course, you also need to know how to cycle if you're taking the bike, because we are going to take the bike this afternoon or morning, depending on which time zone you're tuning in. But it's very interesting you need to have a bike, etc. But you also need to know where to go to, and that's why Melissa showed you the maps. So we have quite some networks there.
Exactly.
But there are also helpful guidelines along the way which help you to understand how to travel.
Yeah, the wayfinding. One of the things that we found really nice, my family, coming here and being new, is that we get lost a lot, and we don't always. Sometimes our battery runs out on our phone unexpectedly, and these wayfinding are really helpful in terms of knowing how much further we need to go and which direction we should travel in. And so sometimes it might take us on a bit of a different route than we had in the past, but we always end up where we intended, which is really convenient.
Yeah, so the wayfinding is quite well organized with like signs everywhere showing this area you want to go. So there are just some examples here. They are often in red with white, and they indeed show you how far the distance is, where the places are to reach. I think this is really important for if you want to have routes. I think this is also something we might need to learn from how routing on car streets is designed, kind of, because this is also for cyclists very helpful if you don't know the area.
Or if you happen to take a wrong turn, or if there's a detour and it's not clearly marked. The wayfinding is really important and a huge benefit when we're trying to get people to have other options if they want them. If it's made easy for them and simple, and you take a lot more of the thinking out of the process. To stress that might cause stress for people, then it makes it much more accessible.
So, we will know our wayfinding, and there's a certain route which we are going to take. Again, another map, one of the last ones. You again see in the top corner where we're starting from, and in the green circles there are places which we are going to briefly stop or talk about during this tour. Please feel free to see if there are any other interesting places which we did not circle. So please feel free to let us know. What I also want to show with this map is that often when you travel somewhere, there can be like barriers, natural barriers like water, or like other barriers which are human-made, such as the railways. And if you see in the second circle, there's really a human-made barrier, which is the railways. It's, as I said, I could also cycle to a station and then take the train, so it's understandable that there are good railway connections. Of course, they could have been underneath the ground or not on ground level and lifted. But in this case, they are partly lifted, but they are really still in the city center. And we will see how we're going to cross this one. But so thinking along, if you're planning your routes, this is something you need to take care of, because in The Hague, coming from the city center, going towards Delft, there are some parts where you need to either cross the railways. And in this way, we will do it with a tunnel. Then again, in the second circle, you also see a water. So that's the natural barrier. And of course, there are limits in how many bridges you can have. So for me, there are kind of 3 bridges, which you also see around that circle, which could be very easy for me and convenient if I want to travel to Delft. There's, of course, one reason why I'm taking the bridge I'm currently taking. But it's just how you can look at the map and see as well where there might be missing links in routes people want to take from one city to another. And we will come back to that later. Then the 4th circle here is a little bit at the bottom, but it's also nearby water. And there is actually another interesting thing. This is not seen as a natural barrier, but actually as a way everyone, if you're cycling from The Hague to Delft, is a point where you want to go to. Because if you come along that water, the route is really, really nice. Yeah. So somehow it's also interesting how it can be, often you have that with waterfronts, that there are routes along it. So it can be seen as a barrier, but it can also be seen as a very positive point. Of course. And I think if you are living in The Hague, it's kind of like, how can I reach this water leading to Delft as easy as possible or as convenient as possible. So I think that's quite interesting. And of course, we've decided on this route today, but there are more routes which you can take.
If you hop on Google Maps and just punch in any address from Delft to The Hague, there are multiple ways. So Shelley's actually taking us on a route that I've never traveled on before. Not the whole route. I do travel along the river quite frequently, but it's interesting to see a different way to get into the city. And in fact, I went into The Hague a couple weeks ago and went on another completely different route. So just having lots of choices depending on where you are and making that access really easy for people.
But you agree with me that cycling along the water at a certain point is nice. That's good. That I'm telling the right thing. And then just the last map, which we're going to show you before we start the tour, is the route going into Delft. As you can see, again, the water. So the cities, of course, historical wise, also in the Netherlands, they have been connected by water before we started all cycling and having cars, etc. So this route is a nice way, and you enter Delft. Our office is really in the city center, so there's only a small bit to go into the city. Yes, I'm moving on. No worries. Okay, so this was all the background about, how can you decide on the route? What do you need before knowing on where to go? We will bring you along the route by the tour which we are having. But I really would like to invite you all to look around you and see if there's anything interesting concerning like how the junctions are designed, concerning about the materials which are used, concerning about different cyclists you see on the way. So I really invite you to open your eyes and digitally join us. Because that's what we would otherwise do if it would have been real life. And I really want to encourage everyone, if at a certain point in time you are in the area and would like to hop on a bike in real life, we are happy to guide you around, and I'm very much happy to guide you from The Hague to Delft. And I know there are quite some other people at Mobycon, but I'm sure also at the city that are interested to talk more about it.
Of course. As Shelley said, take a look at, we're going to go through a lot of different treatments as we're traveling along. I think it's an interesting way to experience all the different ways that we can create these connections for people. And definitely, if you're in the area, give us a shout. We're always willing to give people a little bit of a tour, or be willing to share this video with other people. Share the link on social media if you wish. You wish, subscribe to the channel.
Because it's of course also really nice to have these digital opportunities, and we will just pretend that we are on bike, of course. I was the guinea pig to film this all. So we will just start, I guess, with the tour. So I think I can
there we
start
go.
it at the moment.
So we've started. So just for a note for some of our more lackadaisical cyclists, Shelley is on a road bike, so she's going a little faster than maybe I would cycle, but you can still get an appreciation for the route. So as you can see, we've started out on some cobblestones, pretty normal for residential streets.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting way that especially in the first minute we've already changed from the cobblestones
to
advisory bike lane.
Which we tend not to advise anymore.
No, so it's interesting. The route I'm taking, I really, really like the route, but doesn't mean all infrastructure is perfect. So I think it's also interesting to see that. It's a really busy bit. It's, let's say, 8:30, so rush hour. And I know that this route is really, really busy. So you will see me also going besides the cars. And in this turn, I should have gone on the left-hand side of the car, but I'm sneaking through. And this is really this is the city center of The Hague. So I really know that I need to cross the busy area. This is a very nice street. You also on the left see the nice parklet, which they are currently allowed to have. And I would actually say that this street shouldn't be really open for cars. It is at the moment. It's a one-way street, and actually when you drive into it, you are looped out on it immediately. So there's actually nowhere to go. It's quite interesting for me as a cyclist. I feel okay here, but I know that it's busy. So I know what to expect. I know how to behave, kind of. And then here you can see that the cars need to go to the right, and they are looped back fully almost. So it's actually no really point of going there. But
and if I'm not mistaken, The Hague is one of the cities that is looking at more of the auto-low policies for the city center as well. So reducing the number of cars that have access.
And I think with the looping out of it, there's, as I said, there's no point of really going there as a car. But what you will see a lot, and also on our way here, that there are loads of trucks delivering their goods, etc. So although you're going car low, you still want to have them in sometimes some hours a day. So
I saw you narrowly miss some tram tracks there as well.
So indeed the tram is running through here. I'm going to stop a bit further, as I think this is also, we're getting into, so we are already really in the city center, the heart of the city center. And it's actually, as you say, they're pushing for car low. They're also pushing for having it all pedestrianized, which is very interesting because we are cycling here at the moment, but there are certain rules, limitations around it. And the current rule is now that you're allowed to cycle there before 11:30. So if you're cycling towards your work, most likely you're totally fine. And so between 11:30 and 6, you shouldn't cycle there, and it's all open for pedestrians. And that are the times that the shops are running.
Is that was that in response to the pandemic to reduce?
No,
or is
this? It's applied, or it started last summer.
Okay.
So I assume it was already somewhere in the process longer because it often takes some time. But they are really working on this. So I'm cycling here before 11:30, so I'm totally fine to go. But you can see the pedestrian sign. You can see some other people cycling here, and you definitely see the delivery trucks and small buses and stuff. Why 11:30? Because some shops are opening at 9. But they kind of balance out how busy it is with pedestrians, and especially all the delivery trucks. They kind of said, like, if they are allowed to deliver and cyclists are not allowed, it will be hard to work that out. And on Thursday evening, the shops are opening in The Hague, so then you're not allowed to cycle till 9 in the evening, in the afternoon.
Right.
Here again, this is all pedestrianized. Well, it's also people kind of need to get used to this. I think we're all known with the streets and projects where cyclists and pedestrians sometimes in shopping areas are clashing with each other. So for me, I was happy to show you this part of my route because I really live on the other side of the city center if you look at how you're going to cycle to Delft. So I need to cross the city center somewhere. And I feel like the regulation which is in place at the moment, having it open before I need to go to work and afterwards, for me it works really, really fine. So I hope
there's a nice balance and compromise. So there's comfortable space for pedestrians during economic retail hours and then still that access outside of those hours. Yeah, I think it works fine like this. So this is something I really would recommend to look into these kind of options. So having it shared still, but depending on the hours. And then this is a neighborhood which I really, really enjoy. It's often quite busy with people going in and out of shops. But yeah, of course, I'm a little bit early at the moment. And I'm noticing, Shelley, if you want to pause at the next one. Yes, this one. People are noticing we're entering up into the continuous footpath and bike path and then back down into the street, which is a very common detail. Yeah, I think it's a very smooth detail, but it also does the trick. We call it like an exit construction, so it gives awareness for everyone cycling there or driving there that you're going up. And that means you need to give priority to those which are on the main routes. Definitely agree with you that this is a nice, well-designed area. And we are on a shared street, 30 kilometers an hour. And the street we just crossed with was with separate bicycle lanes. And we're also every once in a while going over some speed tables as well, to help keep people at that 30 kilometer an hour speed. Yes, exactly. So here as well, I think you see quite some cyclists. You again see still the delivery trucks, etc. But only the streets we started at were a lot of cars. But here, this area, the cars are welcome. But it's not crowded with them. So I really feel like I have the space which I want to have, I would say. It's much more comfortable and pleasant. You don't feel like you're competing for space here. Yeah, so you could say there's not really like separate bicycle lanes here, but still how it's designed, low speed, enough space. I feel very comfortable here, and I'm not concerned or worrying about cars here. Again, we have the exit construction. And then often this is a bigger route for cars. And we again have the tram coming in because we're going towards the train station. So here you can see it's one hub of every mode of transport getting together. It makes sense for me that's why they also made like the asphalt bit for the cyclist here, which I think is nice. You can see the tram is overtaking. This might also be one of the trams going to Delft. So if I want to, I could park my bike here and continue like that. You see, it's an interesting area, often around stations or like public transport hubs. Loads of things are going on. So this station here is the Hollandspoor station. Which is one of two there's several stations in The Hague, but these are one of the two main ones. And so this is also, as you were saying, this is where the trams from Delft come in and also take you out to the other areas in and around The Hague. And then the trains from here, you can get to Amsterdam really quickly, to Utrecht, to Leiden. So it's really a big hub or node or... so it's interesting that I'm actually not going to stop and continue cycling. And also you see the streets now on our left-hand side. They recently put a traffic filter in just like 300 meters down the road. And it was very interesting because it was a heavily used road. And now it's no one almost there. And what we see at this crossing, we don't have priority here, but because it's so quiet, we can continue our route smoothly. Here the tram is, so this is our first stop. We need to give priority to the tram. Trams, public transport always gets priority. It's of course up to you if you would rather continue cycling here or just take the public transport. And
often I would do it, of course, depending on where you need to go.
Yeah.
This is the tunnel which I want to talk about, because it's a slow mode tunnel, so it's only for pedestrians and cyclists, no cars there, and that makes it a very good link to the rest of the city. And I also really like this part. You want to say something?
Well, yeah. Well, so we might not have noticed because there was trams, but there's bike parking both on the front and the back of the station, which is really convenient depending on which way you're arriving. So on this side of the station, there's I think 1 or 2 higher education schools as well.
True. Yeah.
And then you've got the city center on the other side. So you've got options for people, which is makes it much more. It makes it much easier to combine the bike and train when you want to do that.
Definitely. And you see loads of bikes parked here. There's indeed a big parking on both sides, and this is the University of Applied Sciences, and I'm actually cutting through their campus, which I kind of like as well. It's like it's busy, loads of young people, and it's kind of a sneak through, I would say, because interesting here is that our bicycle path is going to stop in nothing. So here you might just really need to know it's due to wayfinding or due to cycling here, and of course there's a different loop you can make, and then we're ending at the same, or coming to the same point. But I kind of think this is an interesting sneak through.
Yeah. I was certainly not aware of this. Now I am.
And it's, I think what is nice, because the station is so busy, that they made this sneak through route for cyclists and pedestrians. And it's kind of, because there are so many trams and buses running everywhere, it's kind of nice as a cyclist to have designated areas which are not at the same spots as the trams or buses. So we're crossing that here again. There was just a speed pedelec on the street, but I'm not sure if everyone was able to see that. And this is another thing that I would like to point out, because here, I hope you can kind of see it. Here we are at one of the bridges to cross the water, which we discussed earlier. Yeah. So it's just like the railways and the water just directly after each other. So you kind of need to know how it works out the best for you, I guess.
But then, you know, as you've already pointed out, you know, these natural barriers or the man-made barriers, the important thing is that these have been taken into consideration in terms of allowing for not just cars, but also pedestrians and bikes to get across comfortably and safely. Yeah, and I think it worked out quite well here. And this is also, this roundabout is built on the city ring roads. So there's actually a very busy street running below us, which is built along the water we just crossed. I don't think you can see it, but for here, it's a very easy way to continue our route again. Yeah. And it's, I think it's really, and I kind of enjoy seeing this bit again. So I hope other people are enjoying it together with me at the moment. And I mean, I'm sure people have noticed, but there's some wayfinding there in the top right corner again, and we've passed several of them along the way. So if you're not like Shelley and you haven't cycled this route every day for a considerable amount of time, this is a nice way to figure out, okay, Delft is this way, or Rijswijk is that way. So at this moment, we are starting to follow just the signs to Delft. Of course, everywhere you need to get to a certain point from your house to a certain area, and then you're on the route. But here I think we could say this is starting our intercity route. We're leaving the heart of the city center behind. But what is also happening here is quite interesting, because this we could call the bottleneck of the route, because here again the cycle path disappears. Well, in the other situation it was like, it kind of disappears, but it was really a shared space with pedestrians. And here you really see that I would say it's the bottleneck of this route. I think at a certain point they will start redesigning this bit, and then it will look very different. But at this moment it seems like they are just leaving it like how it is at the moment. And it's not really busy for cars. But what I came across with is that loads of people that haven't cycled here before feel a little bit unsure if they can cycle besides each other or not.
So I think it's, as I say, if this is the worst part of your route, I think it's not too bad.
But I can see,
good,
it doesn't fit into, the principles that we're always talking about the cohesiveness and the attractiveness and making it, really easy to follow.
Yeah. So it's really an old bit out, I think.
Yeah.
But what helps, I think, is that the rest of the route is so clear.
Yeah.
And so easy to follow that it kind of is okay, and it's not that long, but
the speeds are lower.
The speeds are low.
So,
Yeah. But it's also showing that, of course, as every place is struggling with how can I make the right bicycle infrastructure everywhere. Also in the Netherlands, there are spots which are not yet great.
Yeah.
It's also not that worse. But for me, it also showcases that as long as like most parts of the route are almost perfect, it's okay to have a bit which is
the work in progress, the work to come.
Yeah.
Now, Shelley, you talked about this beforehand. We have sped this video up a little bit, and we're still waiting at the stoplight.
Yes, I can speed it up a bit. I think we're almost there, and it's really giving you an impression that I realized that this traffic, the traffic lights can take quite long. But now we were really stuck here for more than 1.5 minutes, which is not too bad. But if you're cycling for just I think we're on our way now maybe for 15 minutes or so, or maybe even 10. So it's interesting that the traffic light really stops us.
Well, and as you were saying, when you're talking about your, cycling to work, every minute kind of counts because it's longer if you're delayed. It takes longer to get to work, and you have to plan accordingly for that. And it's okay. I mean, it's enjoyable. We do it. But the more convenient we can make that, the better.
Yes, definitely. And I think there's also a reason why I'm now happy with this route, because to be honest, it's when I started working at Mobycon, I had a different route I preferred, and now I switched to this one. So who knows which I will be cycling on over a bit. We're now actually crossing this border of The Hague towards another city or town which is called Rijswijk. So we're going across borders. And you see here they have a bit of the bicycle path with bricks rather than the asphalt, but it will be turning back into asphalt very fast again. And it's interesting how also the network just continues. But we are crossing 3 municipality areas. So it's also, these intercity routes need to be a collaboration with the cities you're going to.
So what we might notice too is that, we mentioned earlier how you had to rise up and come back down in the entries. Now we are the priority as we're cycling along.
Yes, thanks for pointing out, Melissa, because there's actually a really nice point that there will be a truck coming from the right, and as you said, he's going a little bit up, and we are, I think, the priority, so I'm happy to continue the path. So we are prioritized here, and that's very convenient. And I think what's also interesting to say here is that this part becomes a bit more relaxing, although I like the enjoyable and busy bits of the city center. Here you are more in a neighborhood. Although the speed is low on the where the car is driving, you have your designated area. So it's very easy going, and you're not besides the cars which are parked, so you also don't have to worry about people opening their doors and stuff.
There's enough space for everyone, and it's also very green. I mean, there's been trees all along the way, but as you get into the residential area, I mean, it's nice to have that green and the different landscape around you. Exactly.
So here it gets very relaxing, and we are just almost reaching the water which we want to reach. Because it does take some time to get out of the city center. And I think that's also something really for intercity routes. The bits really between the cities, which are more like open spaces, will be easy to design, will be easy, or a bit easier to design and a bit easier to find your place. But getting out and in the cities is really something to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now this isn't technically what we would term as a fietsstraat, but it has been calmed. We have the red bricks, so it's a little more of a shared environment for cars and bikes.
Exactly. Yeah. It's indeed not a fietsstraat, a bicycle street, but it's really, again, low speeds, low traffic volumes, and shared space. And then here, this is one of the bigger crossings. And then again, the shared space streets. I'm not sure if they are electric assisted, these bikes, but they're certainly a big impact. They are certainly having a big impact here on commuting. I just read this afternoon that 25% of all trips made is by electric bikes. So I think it's really getting there.
Well, and I think we talked about this before. You know, I think it's very common now. People that have researched this know that the uptake is largely in our 65 and older category.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things, and I don't know if we captured on this route, but it's something that I experience a lot, is even teenagers that live in further areas further away from where their schools are using e-bikes to get to school. Yeah.
It's quite exciting actually, because we often say in the projects which I'm working on as well is that you can cover like 7 to 8 kilometers. I'm going to pause it a bit here, but you can cover like 7-8 kilometers easily on a non-electric bike. But if you want to reach further distances, we actually recommend sometimes people to take electric bike for a certain part, of course, depending on your wishes and stuff. But we say that up to 15 kilometers you can travel with an electric bike. And then if it goes way more than that, you probably don't want to do that for a commute on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Because then the distance is quite long.
Yeah. There are certainly people that are willing to do that for sure, but it's not something that's accessible for everybody.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But it's really exciting that concerning commuting, the electric bike is really promoted also by employers. Yeah. And in the Netherlands, there are certain benefits which you as an employer can give to your employee. And an electric bike is certainly one of them. So I think that's really exciting. And there's still being more and more people taking their bike in the Netherlands due to those motivations from your employer. So
certainly, yeah.
And then, this is the bridge which I just want to point out. And not only because it's a nice bridge, but mainly because it's really good connection. Again, you can see the water as a barrier. We will be just cycling on this side of the water. But you can imagine if you want to be on the other side of the water as a cyclist, it's really nice and convenient to have that bridge. It's called the oversteek, which means the crossing. Yeah. So it gives kind of away already what it's doing.
Yeah. And it is, it's a really nice bridge, and it provides that option. So oftentimes, this is where we frequently cycle along this route, and we'll pick one side or the other depending on where we want to enter into when we're arriving into Delft. Do we want to get directly into the city center? Do we want to meander a little bit through some of the more historic areas? Yeah,
it's really nice. So the bridge is only for pedestrians and cyclists. So it's really, again, giving the option to a cyclist to have an easily route there, and making sure that the water doesn't function as a barrier too much. We're going underneath the A4, which is the highway or motorway. But you see loads of people running, cycling. We are now along the water, and you hope you can understand here why this is a nice path to be as a cyclist. I'm going to speed up a little bit here. So I was very much enthusiastic about cycling, being out, having nice weather because the weather is lovely. And we are on a bicycle street. As you already mentioned, on both sides of the water, there's a bicycle street. So it's very welcoming for cyclists. It's a nice stretch. People are taking out their dogs here. So, so it's a very nice area, and we will just be coming to a car filter. So cars are allowed here as guests, but they can't travel the whole way as we can because there's a bit in between where they either need to stop at one side or can only continue at the other side. I will just quickly pause here to show it to you. So here, this is the filter. And yeah, so this, all the other parts, the car was able to be there as a guest. Here it's only for cyclists and pedestrians, and then it will be a bicycle street again a little bit further.
We actually, I just want to,
Yeah.
so we're just passing the Vliegzicht.
Yeah.
Which is a lovely little restaurant that we've been to a couple of times, mainly to stop for a mid-ride drink or hot chocolate, depending on how warm it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a nice little spot on the river.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you could also see here that as it is an intercity route, you also see that it's enjoyable for recreational purposes. And you see that loads of people are using it for commuting in between the cities or even to like a further city. But it's definitely also a recreational route. So here you can make a nice link between different things you want to achieve with the infrastructure you're putting in place. And I personally also really enjoy the houses which are along this street.
Yeah, they're very cute.
That's probably also because I'm cycling here so often that I'm often like, oh, these are nice areas. Oh yeah, on the left-hand side, so on the other side of the water there is again the tram. So that's the same tram which you can take from Delft or The Hague the whole way. So that's also following the same area.
So we're starting to get a little more back into the built-up area.
Yeah.
We're still in Rijswijk, technically.
Yeah.
So it's about to switch for us.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, you can see how we've sort of had that little bit of reprieve from the built environment, to have a little bit of natural element.
And I think that's the nicest of intercity routes. If it's possible to have like that it feels like you're getting out of the city and getting into the other city, it's kind of a nice change instead of being in the urban area the whole time. This is still an urban area, I would say, but it's because it's along the water, because there's quite some green, because it gives a different atmosphere. I think, and that's really nice to have like routes which have different environments around you.
Yeah. It makes it interesting, right? Otherwise it just gets boring and you tend to lose the interest in what you're doing. Yeah.
Exactly. And there are not so many intersections along these routes. That also makes sense because at one way there is the water, but that makes it a very convenient area as well. And we're definitely overtaking to another sports cyclist. Just to give you the insight that normally I'm not making this journey on my, on my sport bikes, but it was the only bike I could attach the GoPro on. So that because I did try it with my other bike, it was a little bit tilted, and I know it's a luxury to have the different bikes, but that's the reason why. And, as you see, there's loads of different people on their bikes, and with loads of different bikes as well.
So we've just crossed into Delft.
Yes, we've already made it.
And yeah, you've seen we've crossed over a bunch of different types of bridges along the way, and it's nice because all of them are a little bit unique, a little bit different. Again, adding to the element that it's enjoyable and there's things to discover along the way. There's we might have just passed it, or it's up here, I don't remember, but there's like even street art in certain places that are newer along the way that we notice. I think it's that fox up there is one of the newer ones. It just makes the ride interesting for people. And I know we're cycling on advisory bike lanes again, and we do tend to say, try to avoid them when you're building up your cycling infrastructure. And that the reason that these work here is because the traffic is moving slower and there's lower volume. So it's really important to remember that. Because we will advocate for having separation if the need is there.
And we are going to leave them soon, so I will pause here. Again, you see at the intersection, at the junction, you see the wayfinding. So here you want to indeed get rid of this street you're on. And you really need to notice, or you need to be able to check the wayfinding while you're entering this intersection. But we will turning to the right here, and then we are again more on a more bicycle friendly route. It's kind of a cut through again. We're actually entering Delft, so we're going to loop around the historical city center a bit, and we will be arriving to only the second traffic lights which we are counted. So I'm not sure if anyone else noticed it, but I think it's quite incredible how easy it is to continue your routes. We only had to stop like a few times. And I think that's really, I think it's really special to be able to avoid so many traffic lights.
Well, and it helps to, as we've said, it helps to make the ride smooth, and it, just like when we're driving, we want as few barriers as possible. When we're cycling, we want to feel like we can have that continuous motion and achieve flow, essentially, as we're cycling along. So
definitely, and it really shows that with this intercity routes, the cyclists also have priority at certain places, and that you don't have to stop, but that cars are stopping for you. Or I think I will just forward a bit here. Yes, so we're on our way again. Here the infrastructure is also very, very interesting. Those of us who've been to Delft or have seen more of us, we often show pictures and images from Delft. But I think here what they really, really show is that it's shared space. You see the windmill. It's really inviting to be in this area, and it doesn't show here that you should cycle very fast. Or for me, that's at least the feeling which I get compared to the bicycle street where we were along the water. You feel like, okay, I was excited, I can go, but here you slow down. It's quite busy with other cyclists. You might want to call this like a complete street, because on the other hand side of us, there's a tram again, there's space for the cars. But also the pedestrians have loads of space here, so I think it's really, a nice.
It's a really comfortable space to experience, whether you're walking or cycling. One of the things I think we've talked about a few times in various presentations, but it's a really neat point to bring to people, is the area to the right of Shelley right now used to have a viaduct with the train coming through. And that was buried actually just before, or finished before I moved to Delft, which was very convenient in my timing. But now you have this beautiful open space with lots of green, and it's a lot calmer and quieter.
Thanks for pointing out, Melissa, because that viaduct was like really, really, really not nice. And I remember it so well as a child, because I was going to ballet classes just a building beside the viaduct, so I went there quite often. And it's incredible how the railways are indeed digged into the ground. There's again more water. They made car parking garage as well, so they really pushed a lot under the ground so that you have more nice public space to recreate. And there is still building and developing the area. What often happens here is that if the light went green, there's like a stream of cyclists, so I went in between it. But here we are actually going towards the Delft station, and there are developments of housing and offices besides it.
So if you had taken the train today, you would have come out of the station.
So I'm really literally going from almost one train station to another. That's also because I'm really coming from the city center, and our office is so nearby the train station in Delft. But it's quite interesting that I crossed them. Here I'm just pausing because I just want to make sure everyone sees the bus and that we as cyclists and the bus lines are not at the same level. So that's around the station there are so many things going on. And if you want to have it ideal for as many modes as possible, I think it works well to change the levels the modes are running.
And it's convenient there as well, because then it becomes easy access into the cycle parking under the station. So.
So it's quite well connected. I think this was the route so far almost. We're heading towards our office. Again, the bicycle path is lowered than the main route going above it. I think this is how you feel or can perceive it if you're cycling from The Hague to Delft.
On a beautiful sunny summer
day.
And then we conveniently have bike parking right outside.
Exactly. So
all right.
I was thinking about before starting the study tour that I really enjoy this route and I was happy to cycle it together and bring others along. Of course, I'm very curious how people that have just made this route at the first time perceived it.
Yeah.
So feel free to get in contact with us and
absolutely,
see,
yeah. If you have
yeah
questions about the route itself or about some of the treatments, Shelley and I are obviously happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah.
I think, one of the takeaways we really want to make sure people have from this is that it's not when we're talking about connecting cities, as you saw, we went through a lot of different neighborhoods, a lot of different environments, a lot of different treatments, and so it's not necessarily it has to be one size fits all for that whole route. It can be a mixture. It can be, it can be complex, but as long as it's connected, as long as people can find where they need to go, then it's a really viable option for people as they start to transition. As Shelley pointed out at the beginning, it's nice out now in a lot of places. Or if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, maybe it's a little colder, but still okay to cycle. These intercity routes become a really great way for people to experience other ways to have that physical activity in their day, to be a little more sustainable in their travel if they choose to be. And as long as we make that convenient for them, more people will do it. Yeah,
thanks for summarizing that, Melissa, because that was indeed the whole point of taking you on this route, that intercity routes can be great and they can be useful for commuting, they can be useful for anyone that lives along the routes, for different pieces of the routes. Here are some things as a conclusion or a summary. Have a safe route. I hope everyone felt safe along the routes. Some bits might feel a little bit different than others, but I think in general the route was very easy, safe. The speed of all the cars was low. There's really a variety of cycle infrastructure. I think we've come past by like so
pretty
many
much every type we recommend.
So this is not an example where the intercity cycle route has the same format everywhere, the same distance of width everywhere, or the same color everywhere. But for me, it still feels like a nice and easy, understandable route. What we also attached on is that it's nice to have a mixed surroundings during the route, so that it's indeed you don't get bored by everything what is going on. There are open spaces. And I think it's pretty interesting that we only encountered 2 traffic lights, which I think I'm curious about any other intercity routes which don't have a lot of traffic lights as well. And that the collaboration with neighboring municipalities is really needed.
Well, thanks, Shelley, very much for taking us on that ride. I learned some new stuff, so I'm excited to check out a few new routes the next time I'm in The Hague. If anyone, as we said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us we can be reached at our email addresses.
Yes, of course.
Or just through the website, which is mobycon.com. Again, if you really enjoyed the study tour and you'd like to see more study tours or more of our webinars, be sure to subscribe to academy.mobycon.com, which is free for everyone. Or be sure to share this YouTube link with your friends, subscribe to the channel for new videos, like it obviously because it gets us higher in the rankings. But otherwise, I guess we'll see you for our next session, which will probably be in a few weeks. We're still fine-tuning some content. But otherwise, thanks, Shelley.
Thanks a lot, Melissa. And maybe there's one giveaway that if you want to think about your intercity routes in your town, municipality, or region, and if this sparks your brain, we, of course, at Mobycon are happy to think along and see what we can achieve for you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.